Hello, everyone. Good evening. Welcome to another edition of Moffat on Money, starring the lovely and gracious E Train. And Miss Tallulah is making a special guest appearance tonight, needing needing to spread the quan there. So Chunk is probably busy chewing his stick. He has
She
certain
smells,
priorities.
yeah, she smells like banana bread. I can't figure out why.
I would have no idea, but it's
Mm-hmm.
better than she usually smells. So we'll take that as progress.
She just had a bath. That's not even funny.
Yeah, well, her breath. We'll
It
just say
smells
it,
like banana bread.
which is better than it usually smells.
Okay, whatever you say.
So,
Hey, Melissa.
how are
Happy
you doing?
Saturday.
Good to see you. Hope you've had a good week so far. You know, I need to put in my ears.
You can't hear a thing, can you?
Actually, it's coming through the computer, but just to prevent feedback, let me put in my ears. That's a little better.
Because you're a professional. You got this.
I am a professor, so I can claim a little absent mindedness on occasion. That's my story, and I'm sticking to it.
You've earned that.
So I hope everyone's doing well. It's been a pretty week here. For those of you that follow or watch in California, we're saying a little prayer that Hillary doesn't wreck your particular area or state. Hopefully it'll just be like a heavy thunderstorm blowing through by the time it hits. At least that's the projections I'm seeing so far.
That's a good thing.
So we're cheering for you. Otherwise, and people talk about California having a hurricane and it being climate change. I gotta admit, California was hit by a hurricane in 1939. So was that due to climate change, fossil fuels? I have a hard time saying that. It just is due to El Nino, which personally being here on the East Coast, I'm a little happy for because El Nino actually feeds a jet stream across the southern U.S. and it pushes any hurricanes that form in the Atlantic back out into the Atlantic. So it kind of serves as protection for the East Coast, even though y'all may be getting a pretty heavy downpour. Melissa, we're bracing for the tropical storm. LOL. We may get rain tomorrow and Monday, so everyone is stocking up on groceries. Rain's kind of a threatening situation there. Actually, I wish some of our friends in Montana and Canada could get some rain with the
That would be
fires they
nice.
have going on. Yeah, I know got one friend up there whose house is literally hundreds of yards from the fires. I don't know and that was as of this morning. I don't know the current state. Haven't heard anything, but they they move fast. Melissa, I heard that today about the 39 hurricane. Yeah, that was an actual hurricane. Looks like California is just going to get hit with a tropical storm because I believe it's projected to hit land off the Baja, and land will weaken the circular flow.
How many
Reduce it from
Go ahead.
reduce it from a hurricane to a tropical storm.
How many hurricanes hit California?
It's rare.
That's what I thought.
It's
Okay.
very rare because it happens when El Nino sits off the coast of Mexico,
Mm-hmm.
and during summer when the water is warmer, and usually the El Nino breaks up, and kind of dissipates across the west. I mean, the western U.S., southern U.S., whatever. And that that allows the hurricanes to hit the East Coast. So,
Gotcha. I know, like La
El-
Nina is when La Nina first comes into its existence. That's what really kind of messes us up. Hi, Smiling Owl. Oh.
Hey, Smiling Owl. Hoping to stay up as long as I can, but had a stupid, scary, busy week, so may end
Oh.
up replay crew. Well, hope the scary wasn't too scary, but we're glad to have you join us for however long you can. We really
Absolutely.
appreciate you checking in and joining us tonight. So, hurricane hitting Baja, weakening to a tropical storm. Really should be, like Melissa said, just 24 hours worth of rains, unless it does like Florence did. Florence literally was a Cat 4, high Cat 4, Cat 5 heading toward us, got about 90 miles offshore and just dropped from a Cat 5 to a tropical storm. Not bad.
It was a Cat 1 when it got here. It just stayed here forever.
But then it didn't move. It just literally parked on top of us for 3 or 4 days. And so instead of having 24 hours of really hard rain, we had 3-4 days of hard rain. And everything just flooded. The creeks, the lakes, everything overflowed. Runoff was just crazy. It was washing out roads and bridges and flooding a lot of the lowland, a lot of the interstates in the lower lying areas. It was a mess. So that was the problem with Florence. It wasn't really the hurricane part. It was the rain.
I-40 was under like 4 feet of water.
Yeah.
Like from, gosh, I don't even know, probably like 40 miles out to Wilmington. It was completely underwater. And it is the weirdest sight to see a major highway like that. There's just water.
I left because it was going to be a Cat 5. And if a Cat 5 hits us head on, it'll wipe everything off this island. So I left, went to Atlanta, stayed with my baby. And, you know, as soon as it hit and it was only a Cat 1 or tropical storm, I thought, okay, I'll make it back. So I literally got in my car and started heading north. And normally it's a 6-hour drive. Well, it took me nearly 15 hours because I literally drove all around the eastern part of the state. Every road was closed. They had National Guard out, police, whatever. And I'd be like, do you know of a route that's open? And they would say, well, this one maybe. So I'd drive down, go find the little cotton picking route, end up being closed. Was very fortunate to find one gas station that was open that had a generator to operate the pump, but you had to pay cash. Well, I had enough cash to fill up. And so that saved me. But I was literally sucking on fumes at a little old rock gas station out in the middle of nowhere. And they were charging, you know, $10 a gallon because they knew they knew what they had. But
I mean, Wilmington, right after you got back into town, I'm assuming Wilmington became an island.
It really did.
There was no way in or out. You were just stuck.
Yep. So it was Florence was a mess, but it wasn't the hurricane side of it. Crazy Cat Queen, hey, how are you doing? Good to see you. And yeah, we're talking about hurricanes. We were kind of laughing earlier because California doesn't get hit with hurricanes, and most people there would have no idea what to expect. And there's really certain little preparations you need to do if you're going to be hit by a hurricane. So we were talking about that a little bit. It's been a topic of some debate.
I got Brentwood.
Brentwood, good evening. Good to see you.
Okay, so I'm going to admit here, Clay and I, literally on like Friday morning, I'm like, so what are we going to talk about tomorrow? And Quaddy, hey girl.
Quaddy,
and
good to see you.
And Clay's like, this, maybe this. I was like, how about this or this as well? He's like, yeah, okay. So I make a thumbnail. And then he's like, yeah, we're not talking about any of that stuff. I'm like, oh, okay. So here was the plan that I thought we had, by the way. The Michael Oher debacle, the Chinese economy collapsing, and then the Human Rights Campaign, which is funded by George Soros to do the CEI, or the, help me out, the help me, the Corporation Equality Index. Is that correct? Clay, are you alive?
Yes.
Okay,
I'm having to
thank
think.
you. Hey, KP.
KP.
So yeah, so that's what I thought we were, because that's what all this wokeness in the ad campaigns and everything is about. So, anywho, we'll see what happens tonight. I have no idea.
I'm just going to let that slide. We have a little bit different version of the story, but we'll just let that one go. Worried about any flooding, CQ, worried about any flooding might happen in California. That's usually the big risk, but as dry as they've been, you'll have, flash flooding, the wildfires. Hopefully it, reaches the areas that have those going. But depending on how much rain, it could be messy, could create some problems. I like this at KP. Face-red-heart-shape.
It's an emoji. It's like it's a heart with like a, never mind. Clay is not a YouTube. He doesn't understand the YouTube things. I'm sorry.
I just like typing it out. I think that's cool as hell.
Hello, Miss Sandra. It's just never mind. We're going to just, never mind.
Go ahead and give this a little attention. If you will, hit the subscribe, do the YouTubey little things, turn on notifications, hit the like button.
Ring
we
that
really
bell.
Appreciate your support. Mm-hmm. It does help.
Yes.
So I'm sitting there thinking, Tallulah's gone.
Yeah, I think she's in your room. I don't know. She's left.
I was going to say, Chuck looks like he's passed out, but I believe he's still chewing. I see him chewing in the background.
She's under my feet. Never mind. Now she's going to go try to take that chew. So, yeah.
Well, tonight, hopefully will be an interesting and fun night. We've got a couple things on the agenda, as Ellen was somewhat alluding to. We're going to talk about CPI. CPI and inflation, particularly inflation's been a hot topic. It's quote unquote determined in this country by CPI. So if people say, inflation is 3.6%, they're talking about the latest CPI number. And if you've listened to me, for a few times, you've heard me modestly complain about CPI. I think it's a trash number. So tonight, we're going to talk about, why is CPI a trash number? CPI versus inflation, fact versus fiction. Also cover a little bit on China. China is a huge player in the global economy, obviously has significant influence on our own economy. So we'll take a look at some of the underlying things going on in the Chinese economy, and hopefully gain a little bit better understanding of what that means for the U.S. and the U.S. economy. So let's start with inflation.
Hang on. I got to say the title of this is actually pretty good. The thumbnail title. What in tarnation's going on?
That's apropos.
Mm-hmm.
Give Ellen her props. She got the title down. She could only get the topic down. But
we'll talk later about that.
The tarnation is going up with CPI. CPI is the Consumer Price Index. It is the calculation published monthly by a government agency known as the Bureau of Labor Statistics, which people use as a proxy or measure of inflation. And I hope by the time we're done talking about this, that I will completely dissuade you from any belief or position that CPI is a measure of inflation. Now, Ellen is awesome. She has her moments.
Thanks, man.
Don't want to get her all cocky tonight, but she has her moments. I do like a tarnation once in a while. Crazy cat queen. Amen to that. KP, love the title. Anytime someone uses the word tarnation, my heart flutters.
It's got to, right?
Can you review Russia's economy in the future? That might be interesting. We can add that to the list, actually. Okay, CPI. CPI, as I mentioned, right now is about 3.6%. That's supposedly the amount of inflation over the past year. Now, honest question for you all. Do you think, honestly, that your expenses over the past year have only increased 3.6%? The things you buy, has that only increased 3.6%?
Give them a chance to answer. Hang on. What do y'all think? Because I know you're ready to go.
I mean,
Bueller.
I will not only say for me, not only no, but hell no. The 3.6% is almost completely irrelevant, unreal.
Oh, hell to the no. Yep. Nope. Nope.
So what I want to impress upon you is that, and most people, the vast majority of people, even in economics, even in finance, don't understand that CPI actually doesn't try to measure inflation. It is used by everyone as the inflation proxy or measure. But CPI doesn't try to measure inflation. It actually tries to measure a range of, quote, consumer spending behaviors. See, Tallulah's even interested in this. She's like, what the hell's happened to the price of my treats and dog food?
Listen.
So it tries to measure consumer behaviors. And those behaviors are constructed by the government. That ought to be a fair warning as to the accuracy of CPI in your life. Now, understand, the government wants low inflation. It wants to report low inflation, because if you're a politician reporting high inflation, obviously that's going to bring some hate, some criticism. Secondly, the government uses inflation, the CPI number, not actual inflation. It uses the CPI number to calculate the increases in Social Security, in food stamps, military retirement pensions, payment for school lunch programs, all have increases tied to CPI, which is fascinating because, again, CPI doesn't try to measure inflation. Do what?
I've seen people, or I've worked for employers who would actually increase your pay based on the CPI.
Yeah. Some people do have that type of cost of living increase built into their contract, but very, very few. Now, with the government being $33 trillion in debt, the government prefers to spend less on cost of living increases, something that retirees are painfully aware of. And I mean, it's really the people on fixed income, particularly Social Security or a pension or disability, who get hurt most by the failure to accurately reflect inflation and adjust their payments accordingly. So I say CPI is bullshit. Well, how best do you manipulate a number? Well, you have a department calculated that, first of all, operates under a veil of secrecy, such as the Bureau of Labor Statistics, or BLS, as most people refer to it, BLS, which I think stands for bullshit, lies, and statistics, but it doesn't. When the BLS, and you know what I'm thinking every time I say BLS. Anyway, when the BLS releases the inflation data, CPI, I really shouldn't even call it inflation data, CPI, it doesn't release the raw data it gathers. It doesn't specifically detail what info it gathers. It doesn't release the formula it uses to calculate that number. So why is a government agency so worried about concealing how it calculates a critical, a vital number? Well, their stated reason is so companies can't compare prices. Did I mention what the B in BLS stands for?
Bullshit.
Bullshit. Government, comparing prices is as difficult as getting on the internet and searching for your competitors' products. You can go to the grocery store, look at your product, and look at the products right next to it. Comparing prices isn't an issue. So that's just literally, and I don't want to be terribly profane, but that's just a bullshit response. The real reason is government agencies hate to have their work inspected or reviewed. Bottom line, they don't want anybody questioning their number. Sending my love out to the BLS. Honestly,
basic life support.
Yeah, BLS, basic life support. Basically, with the crappy job that they do, I can't blame them, I guess. Crazy Cat Queen. It's so the government can change how they calculate the index. Bingo. And we'll see that here because the BLS has changed, by their own admission, has changed the CPI calculation over 20 times the last 35 years. And each time they change it, it results in a lower CPI calculation. How cool is that? Now, statistically, I don't have any problem with somebody adjusting their formula over time, any number of times. But the probability that every adjustment changes the number in only one direction is statistically impossible. Unless the goal was to reduce that number. Now, BLS calls this methodological improvements. Improvements for who? For voters, for consumers, or for politicians? You decide. Now, kind of like Crazy Cat Queen alluded to, what you want to bet that a bunch of these improvements are either deletions or alterations, substitution of items that experience high inflation. So it's a hell of a lot easier to get a low inflation number if you take the products that have high inflation and throw them out, substitute something else. Now, the BLS doesn't say how many items it tracks. It just says it selects out of 200 categories of items. 200 different categories. Now, 10 years ago, I saw one release that indicated that it was about 70 to 80,000 different products that they sampled or tracked. The BLS has never said it uses all items in the calculation, giving it some leeway to choose or alter the selection. Now, what it does or has said, and I quote, if the selected item is no longer available, or if there have been changes in the quantity or quality. For example, eggs sold in packages of 10 when they previously were sold by the dozen. Of the good or service since the last time prices were collected. Here's the key. The economic assistant, the one calculating the data, the economic assistant selects a new item or records the quality change in the current item. The data is then put into the black box along with other factors unknown. The BLS just calls them other factors, taken from the Census Bureau and consumer spending patterns. Whatever the hell that is. I don't know. Remember, I said CPI doesn't measure the changes in price as it advertises, but something called cost of living, spending habits.
Well, I think may I say something? It's, they're not buying this anymore because it's too expensive. They're buying this instead. And I think that is, excuse me, that might be part of the issue. Does that make sense?
I think it's definitely part of the issue. Yeah. They pick which products they want to include in the calculation and do so in such a way that it lowers the actual results. To me, calculating inflation is mathematically, computationally not difficult. You have a basket of goods, for example, groceries. Include the, hamburger, includes steak per pound. It's just per pound. Milk per gallon, eggs per dozen, can of tomato soup, pasta, 1 pound. These things don't change over time. But I saw one example that the BLS gave, they may include apples. Well, we think apples, that would be some average price. No, from month to month, they may pick a different type of apple. Whichever one increased the least. Again, it's not a measure. Their argument is, the consumers will change what they buy. So we're trying to mimic consumer behavior.
So they could, if they're picking an expensive apple like Honeycrisp, right? And it doesn't go up that much because the demand isn't as much as that for Red Delicious or Granny Smith. So if the price on that particular apple didn't go up as much, then that's what they would use.
Right.
Even though it's not the most purchased.
That's my impression. They don't actually come out and say that directly.
Gotcha.
Again, they're very secretive. They throw this in a black box. So, but they say they try to mimic consumer behavior. Okay. So as prices rise, the BLS assumes you buy less and it doesn't impact your cost of living as much. How cool of an assumption is that? Because gas prices go up, you buy less because your commute to work is now much shorter.
How did that happen?
Right? You don't have to pick your kids up at school anymore.
Say the exact same thing. Yeah, that's
Crazy Cat Queen. It's a random sample. Yeah, random depending on what prices are most advantageous to them. Crazy Cat Queen. I guess I should say the whole name there. I think we should start our own CPI, correct price index, and have it standardized across years, then published together to see what it really is. I actually thought about doing that, but it's a hell of a lot of work for one person, particularly if you have other jobs or duties. Now, if y'all want to raise a fund, we can negotiate this price, but.
Don't you work at a university?
Yeah, work. Yes.
Oh, thanks, honey.
What was your analogy?
About the Apple Crisp versus the Honey Crisp versus the Red Delicious or the Granny Smith.
That's why I keep her on the air.
See, I'm good for something. Maybe not thumbnails, but I'm good for something.
She actually does a hell of a lot of work and a great job behind the scenes, not to mention having a very gracious presence on air.
What do you want?
So understand that CPI is not meant to be a measure of the upward price movements of goods or services. It doesn't fit the BLS's own definition of inflation, which is what I just gave. The BLS, well, but let me back up. BLS defines inflation as the upward price movements of goods and services. CPI doesn't even meet that definition. Yes, Ellen, I got it. Thank you. You think she nags me bad on the air? You ought to see it off the air.
Oh, I'll leave you alone.
I'm kidding.
Oh, y'all are so sweet. Thank you.
She's also prettier. Yeah, she's got me on that.
I'm a gem.
Yeah. She has a very sweet spirit. She really does. And am privileged to know her and work with her. Now,
And he's like, y'all shut up. It's back to me. Oh, shit.
y'all are making me blush. Yeah.
Go ahead.
Now, CPI. Yeah, I'm trying to remember where I was. CPI doesn't meet or the BLS's own definition of inflation. It doesn't even, now, years ago, the BLS used to define CPI as the falling value of money. They now have trashed that definition, which is interesting to me. Because historically, inflation has always been defined as more money chasing fewer goods, or the loss in value of money, purchasing power. Mm-hmm. I'll detail that a little bit more in just a second. But over the past 5 years, the supply of money in circulation, it's a measure called M2. The Fed calculates it and publishes it. Well, the past 5 years, M2, the amount of money in circulation, has gone from 14,150,000,000 to 22,050,000,000. This is a growth rate slightly under, just a hair under 10% a year.
Now, wait. We're talking printed money, or are we talking?
Yeah. We're talking money in circulation, checking accounts, whatever.
So digital or otherwise.
Yeah.
Okay. Just want to
the
make
amount
that clear.
Of money that's available to spend, chasing goods and services. Now, 10% a year, what's that actually mean to you? Well, at 10% a year, the prices of goods will double every 7 years. So 7 years ago, if you bought something for 50 cents, it now costs $1. That's inflation. Same good, same item, nothing's changed. M2 went from 15 billion and change to the 22 billion and change in 2 years, from February 2020 to April 2022. That's 20% a year in 2 years. At that rate, prices double every 3 years, a little over every 3 years. Now, let me ask you an honest question. Does that sound more like what you've experienced in buying goods?
Yeah.
Prices have doubled the last couple of years. Prices have doubled the last 5, 6, 7 years.
The last 2 or 3 years.
And again, go back to that historic definition of inflation. More money chasing fewer goods. You remember during COVID, we also cut back production. Even when the lockdowns were lifted, a lot of people didn't go back to work or work from home. Their production is a little lower. So inflation, purchasing power, loss in purchasing power. The more money in circulation, the higher inflation goes. Now, we've talked about QE, quantitative easing. That's the Fed's policy of supplying tons of money at very low rates to banks over the past 10, 15 years, since 2009. Well, to give you a comparable measure, since 2009, M2 has gone from 8 billion to 22 billion. That's about 8% per year growth. Now, if you look at the CPI calculation over the same time, the average was about 1.8% before bumping up to 7% for 2021. You know, comparably, the whole economy grew about 3% per year. So the growth in the money supply was easily doubling the growth in the economy. So you wonder why we have inflation. Look no further. Again, this is what we would suspect if we're looking at the right things. But if you're just watching CPI, no. Now, Crazy Cat Queen mentioned coming up with our own index. This is not an index, but I just took a few items and tracked them down and looked at the price changes. For example, beef. From 2021 to today, beef has increased 35%. The price of beef has increased 35%. Now, according to CPI, over the past year, it's increased 4.9%. According to my information numbers, it increased 10% since last year. Since 2009, it's up 137%. Gas from 2021 is up 131%. From 2022, it's up 15%. CPI says it's up 4%, if I remember. 2009, gas is up 101%. Housing. We talked about housing prices a lot and how difficult it's getting for, middle America, average workers to buy a house now. Well, from 2021, housing prices are up 33%. Have your wages gone up 33%? 2022, from 2022, past year, houses are up 13%. Even with the recent drop in prices. From 2009, housing prices have more than doubled to up 131%. Clothing.
Where are you going?
From 21, clothing prices, and I didn't have a specific clothing index. What I used is data on textiles and apparel, finished cotton. Okay, so looking at this one category, finished cotton, I use as a proxy for clothing in general. Nice ass, Tallulah.
Sorry, she's. If you're gonna
got a nice big glow up there.
Sorry, she's. Tallulah, you got to move, baby. You can't stand on the computer. You can get in your bed here, or you can do. You can't.
Y'all have any doubt who runs this household?
It's not me and it's not you. I'll tell you that.
It's a little 7-pound dog. Speaking of nice views.
I can't see because she's turned my screen off.
She unfortunately did not turn your camera off.
Shit. All right. Now I can see.
Where was it? Oh, clothing.
Sorry.
Clothing is up 44% from 2021. From 2022 in 1 year, it's up 23%.
Tallulah.
How about college tuition? From, for public schools through data is only available through 2020. So we're truncated the last couple of years. But since 2009, tuition's up about 60%. This is kind of a nice little pic showing. If you can see down here, the light blue, that's CPI. Up above, the green is the annual change in tuition from 1980. Since 1980, tuition has increased 1,200%, 1,200%. Inflation CPI is up 236%. So big difference.
Sorry, I'm not laughing. I'm not laughing at you. I'm just, yes. Tallulah is being her catness today. Stop it.
When are the index numbers taken? For beef at the market or the supermarket? I'm looking at the average price per cutting. So for like a whole beef, that's not the grocery store price. So my inflation numbers would probably be less than the actual retail prices. There's not good data that I can find on the retail prices over this time. Mine's just looking at, we'll call it the wholesale price of a side of beef. So one last item, cars and trucks. How cool is that? Cars and trucks are up 55% since 2020. So in this brief review, I've got food, clothing, gas, housing, school, transportation, things you buy monthly, which constitute, I think, for the average family or the average person, the majority of their expenses. Should I add in healthcare? Should I add in prescriptions? We all know what's kind of going on in those areas. Anyone think this would average out to 1.8% a year? It's insanity. Now, if, we talked about how politicians don't want a high CPI. So how would politicians handle a high CPI if the BLS actually tried to reflect inflation? Well, Turkey handled it. The premier of Turkey fired the statistics chief after inflation data showed a 19-year high. So that's probably not terribly different than what would happen here. And the key is, we haven't had per se high inflation according to the releases. We have the advantage of manipulating our data better than other economies and other countries. So, if you want to take pride in CPI, there you go. You can take that justifiable pride in American skill and ingenuity and keeping the CPI number down low. Does that make sense?
It does. I think I figured out what the problem is up here with the dogs.
You shaved her butt too close?
No, they're hot. They wanted ice.
Crazy Cat Queen. Beef price. The price has gone up more than that because from butcher or supermarket where almost everyone actually purchases their beef, the transport, wrapping, butcher costs also get piled on. Yes, they do. And I suspect the rates for some of that are even greater. I've heard farmers complain repeatedly that they are not seeing the same price increases that the supermarkets are selling it for. I just can't find good data on that, or couldn't today. If it's out there, I'm not sure where it is. If it's out there and somebody knows, please let me know. I'd be curious. But that was the best data. That was from the agricultural department. And I had to go through, some pathways to get there. They don't make the data readily available, which to me is another big problem.
Are you done?
But
Okay. Jump.
Brentwood, thank you for explaining away. I can understand. I appreciate that. That's the goal. Now, CPI, knowing this about CPI, it doesn't help you in terms of putting money in your pocket. It doesn't help you make hello to Lula. Lula's still hunting ice. She's like, this is not my best side. Let me show you my best side.
Yeah, I know. No, she used to like lay on my desk when I would be at work. She would just hop up there. She used to go work with me all the time, and she would just hop up there and lay down. So I was like, "Well, do you want your bed up here?" She does not. She doesn't know. She's just sorry,
Ellen.
Yeah, I'll shut up.
No.
Yeah, of course.
She didn't read it. Crazy Cat Queen. Oh, great.
We
so
can
we can take
pride
in how we pull the wool over citizens' eyes.
I read it.
Exactly. I was going to get you to read it out loud because you always do that to me. So paybacks aren't exactly hell.
This is what she wanted. It was hiding.
Well, I'm glad she's happy. So it's garbage in, garbage out. Guy go. Always. Guy go. Garbage in, garbage out. And that's pretty much what we're getting from the BLS. Tallulah Cam. We're going to have to change the name of the show.
I know.
To Tallulah Cam. Oh, now this sounds like a story. Sorry, I was pulling Duncan out of the azalea bush. He was chasing a possum bigger than him.
Yeah, I mean, her dogs are like 3 pounds. So I was just chasing Tallulah all over my desk. So I don't know what to tell you. I get it.
I remember when we started doing this channel, somebody mentioned that we ought to put the dogs away or something.
Oh, yeah.
And we both were looked at each other and like, nope. Yeah, we don't. Certain
your channel
members,
will be great without.
Certain people will just not subscribe to this channel.
Yeah, they said your channel would be great without the dogs. We were like, no, that's not how this works. I'm glad Duncan is safe.
I was sitting there thinking, Sandy said we need a Tallulah cam. We actually put a cam up on behind Ellen, focus on the bed. One show to just kind of show them. We did actually do that once.
Yeah, we just can't figure out how to keep it going with 2 other. We would have to make the Tallulah cam a guest. I don't know how to exactly. That's more on your end of the spectrum than mine.
Yet, let's just say StreamYard is not the most adaptable program out there.
No.
So
I know it's possible.
We'll just go with that.
It's just that we would have to hook the camera up to like a separate email address, and our cameras don't do that, or we haven't figured out how to do that with our cameras. I'm not sure exactly how all that works.
I basically have to run it in a separate window in a browser and then pop it up on the screen. I can't just like put it down in the corner or whatever. StreamYard doesn't allow that. So it's either all Tallulah or all Ellen. Y'all take the pick.
Excuse me. Do you see this?
Clay, you have to be careful when you say things like, we used to keep a camera focused on the bed. Yeah, for the dogs only. And I'm one of those people that
I agree.
when the
Listen,
show's over, I put a piece of sticky tape up on the camera. When I buy a computer, I'll physically disconnect the microphones, usually. Actually haven't on this one. It's a relatively new computer, but yeah, I'm just cautious about what goes out publicly.
I don't know how you do it on mine, but there's a thing you can just switch it off.
As we found out the one night when Ellen was having technical difficulties because there's a little shutter on her camera.
Oh, there it is. Bye, y'all. Hey. Wouldn't that be easier than just a piece of paper?
Well, I have a separate camera. It's not the computer camera. The computer camera actually is not all that hot.
So now I just got like a whole new trick. Bye, y'all.
Clay didn't realize what he was saying. Clay oftentimes doesn't realize what he's saying.
There we go. How cool is that?
Thank you, Sandy.
Okay, Chunk wants some screen time. Come on, buddy. You can't. No,
Chunk's getting a little jealous now.
Extremely, because then she found a new chew up here. Come on.
While we're waiting on Chunk to make his appearance, anybody have any other questions on inflation, CPI? Now, if I say something that doesn't make sense, you got to let me know. I'll be, once you let me know, it then becomes my responsibility to figure out a way to explain it so that it does. But if you have any questions, don't hesitate to ask. And there is Mr. Chunkers, whose face you cannot see, whose eyes you cannot see, but I promise you he has a very black soul.
No, he does not, but he speaks all the time, except for when we're on camera. Like, he doesn't say it. He talks constantly. Like, we can't get him to stop. Maybe I could do this. We won't. You want it?
Is he fixated on that or what? He can be the most intense little critter you've ever seen when it comes to his chews or his ball. He is all about that life.
Oh, that's what I need to try. Hang on. Because I want you to talk. You talk all the time. I've got one in here, I think.
Sandy, you got to get to know him. He is the most personable, happy little sucker you've ever seen. I've been around dogs in all my life, but this guy is just unstoppable in terms of being a happy little sucker. The ball. He will kill for that ball.
You got to tell me about it. Do you want it? Talk to me. What? Huh? Oh. I'm not throwing it until you say something. Say something. Talk to me. Why doesn't he say anything when we want him to?
He's usually very talkative. We've got a little short on the...
Not like that. He'll go, grr, 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 grr.
We've got a little short on the channel. It's 19 seconds, but it's pure chunk. And that's the chunk she's trying to bring out. But he's a little mad because he's got his ball within reach, but it's not being delivered to him.
No. No. I can just, Actually, I almost always just close. Because I'm on a laptop, I just shut it. No interest in all that.
Yeah, I'm not a big fan of Alexa and all those little things. Now Tallulah's mad because Chunk has a ball and she doesn't. Anyone looking to record what's going on around my computer is in for terrible disappointment. Lots of cursey words, mumbling about what the hell, or you got to be kidding, etc. when I'm doing research.
I bet.
Mine is probably the same. I am just by nature more of a private person. And know that there's, some people at the NSA who get bored and just kind of surf the web, let's say. So I'm usually just a little bit more cautious, a little bit more private by nature. Having this show obviously goes a long way towards alleviating privacy issues because we are not terribly private now, but do you think the dogs like those little balls or what? That is our life, throwing ball all night long.
Like seriously, all night long, all day long.
Seriously.
They something about that type of ball. We've tried lots of other balls, but I don't know how we found that purple one or how it came to us.
It's a soft rubber ball, but they don't tear it easy.
They've never torn one up.
Yeah, it's actually pretty tough for them to tear up. And they usually kill the squeaker in it unless it's a new ball, which apparently Ellen gave them a new ball. So the purple one, squeaker's already torn out.
That was the first one, but the rest of them still squeak. We bought 3 more because we were like, Chunk is going to be so devastated if something happens to this ball. So yeah, and it's squishy enough that like Tallulah, I mean, she's 7 pounds, Chunk's like 22 pounds, but she can still fit it in her mouth and squish down on it, and that makes her very, very happy. Because tennis balls, she can't fit in her mouth.
Yeah, they both have gotten competitive as hell trying to retrieve the ball. We throw it 50, 60 times a night, literally. Probably more than that, actually. Crazy Cat Queen. Yeah, I'm pretty sure I lost any privacy issues in Iraq.
I bet you did.
Yeah, that would do it. This is cute. Green Bean hears the squeaks and wants to play.
Oh, Green Bean.
And Sandy, same here in the evening. And Duncan will walk around with it squeaking constantly. Dogs, Jeeps, either you love them or you don't. There's really no in between. And ours are, I will say they are loved. Annoying as hell, but they are loved. They're cute. All right.
Says the
next topic of the night.
Who makes them either, says the man who makes them either an egg every morning or oatmeal, one or the other. He makes them breakfast every morning.
Well, they need to eat.
They have dog food.
Nobody wants to eat kibble all the time.
And then he gives them cheese and some sort of meat in the afternoon, and then again later in the afternoon, and then they get whatever he's eating for lunch, and then some of what he's gotten for dinner. They don't even know what dog food is anymore.
Well, the thing is, if the situation was reversed, I am damn sure they would make sure I had good food and fresh water all the time.
I know. All right. Sandra, couldn't live without my 3. I know they are, honey. They are so cute too. I don't know if you got that. I sent you a YouTube short that was really cute about 2 little tiny Yorkies. No, I mean, Chunk burps every time he eats, but that's about it.
He burps. He burps every time he eats.
Yeah.
He doesn't have.
I'm just saying.
He doesn't have issues.
I just said, as far as gas, no, he just burps. But Tallulah doesn't have any issues. He didn't have any issues.
Oh, I thought you said he farts every time he eats.
No, I said he burps.
Yeah.
I mean, big burp, like you could hear it across the house. Burp.
Seriously, every time he eats something, there's a burp. It's like it's his idea of good manners, telling you that he really appreciates the food. That's how I take it anyway. But yeah, we have learned not to feed them grease. No grease. No fat off meat, that no greasy sausage, or very, very little of it. Even though they love it, the results are not pleasing in a multitude of ways.
Mostly for me, because I have to shampoo the carpets afterwards.
All right. Well, let's talk a little bit about China. Kind of the second topic for the night.
True. Ham is terrible.
I'm sorry. What'd you say?
Oh, Catherine Fraser said ham is terrible. Also want to point it. I'm sorry, before we get to China. You can't feed little dogs dried mango, grapes, dried cherries, any kind of dried fruit is terrible for them. And there was something else, Clay, that, of course, no like major fats. I had to get on you about this stuff. Of course, Chunk refuses to eat any processed meat whatsoever. But anyway,
So,
continue on. Go ahead.
okay. China. For years, decades, China has been an economic growth engine that has really significantly contributed to world growth, to the economies in Europe and especially in the U.S., both in expanding trade and offering cheaper goods, which allow consumers here in this country to save money on a number of purchases. We complain about jobs going overseas because their labor is so much cheaper. And it's cheaper to ship raw goods over there, produce the items, then ship them back over here than just manufacture them here. Well, the flip side is that does save consumers money, and they have more money to spend as a result. So, how do you value that trade-off? Can't really do that, but need to be aware of that is a trade-off. The idea is that China has a global reach and has had a significant enough economy to really fuel or contribute greatly to the world's economy. Well, past is not prologue. China is collapsing their economy literally right in front of us. And a number of these decisions or policies that they have enacted, some as far back as 30 years ago, have literally, my opinion, doomed China's future, their future economic growth. Now, if we look at it, there's a number of problems. First of all, the main problem, demographics. China's demographics. China is the fastest aging population in history. This, according to Peter Zehan, who's kind of a geo-demographic guy, has a relatively well-known channel. If we look at China's demographics, yes, ma'am.
Aren't they also the slowest or the least growing population as far as births?
Well, getting to that.
Okay.
Give me a second.
Sorry.
Here is, and this data is from China. Okay. Anytime you get data from China, you always have to take it with a grain of salt. I mean, like a big grain of salt, a big old nugget of, a big old block of salt. Okay. But here it shows the breakdown. Here it shows helps if I put it on the screen, doesn't it?
It does.
Here you show the breakdown by year for females and males. And it's kind of hard to tell, but if you look, these categories from about 3/4, well, let's say about 3/5 the way up, are those who are 35 to 40. And you can tell that's where all the weight is. Now, what should you see? Here is an example of a normal demographic curve with, the old being the smaller groups and then the newborn, the very young, being the base. It's almost like a pyramid shape. And historically, that's how populations have worked, and that's how economies grow. Because, and we talked about this on a previous broadcast, it's the young people who produce stuff and buy stuff. For example, your grandparents, what did you buy them for Christmas? I mean, I don't know about y'all, but my grandparents were a pain in the butt to buy for. They had everything. They did not want anything. Their Christmas list was just a hug. So, I'd buy my grandfather like a pair of socks and a bottle of cheap wine. And he was, just as happy with that as he would have been anything else. They just wanted a little time. But, my sister, when she was 20, 22 and got married, what did she need? I could go out and buy her anything, everything, because she didn't have anything. They were setting up a new house. When she had her first kid, needed tons of stuff. So it's the young people who consume. It's the young people who provide the majority of labor. And it's generally, key point, the young people that take care of the old. So if you look at China's demographics again, you can tell that this distribution is grotesquely skewed from what normally you would expect. Now, as I said, this is based on China's data. Well, there have been some people who took China's other data, other information, and made adjustments to this release. The yellow ones are believed to be mythical components of each of those demographics. So the red is, or I should say the remaining red more accurately describes what the actual demographics are probably like. And you'll notice the females are really thin. The males are still way behind the older groups. This is 50, 55, 60, 65, 70. You add all those up, and it's overwhelmingly, 55 and above, 50 and above. Very, very, just almost the normal distribution flipped on its head. So China's the fastest aging population in history. And this is due largely to China's one-child policy. About 35 years ago, China introduced a one-child policy. Families could only have one child. So this led to sex-selective births, abortions, even infanticide, with a strong preference for boys. Now, understand, China has historically been an agrarian society, and boys are preferred in agrarian societies because they can do more work on the farm, and the males have responsibility for the parents when they grow old. So the boys are also the parents' retirement system. Hence, the preference for boys. So some estimates show that China reduced its births, largely females, by 400 million over the last 35 years.
Wow.
Now, as a result, wow. Now, as a result of this, China's gender ratio, boys to girl, is roughly 112 boys to 100 girls.
Okay, I know I'm kind of in and out on this because I'm looking at other things, but what is the yellow at the bottom on the ends?
Yellow. Well, I first threw up this graph, which was China's public estimates of the distribution of the population. Mm-hmm. Well, certain Chinese experts and watchers have adjusted it taking out
Okay.
components that they believe are mythical. So the yellow
Okay.
would be
Sorry.
exaggerations by the Chinese Communist Party in
And this
releasing the
is
data.
and this is
The red would be what these people believe are more accurate estimates.
actual. Okay, and this is
Yes.
up to what they predict until 2025.
Yes.
Okay. Sorry, I just,
Nope. That's
Chunk was
okay.
trying to eat Tide Pods, so I had to get those away from him.
Oh, let him go ahead and experience that joy. Make him an official Gen Zer.
Well, I think he's been watching too much TikTok. It must be the neighbor's puppies.
Maybe. So the loss of girls in the society has obviously had significant impacts on women in Chinese society. Historically, women haven't been of much value, but since there are so few of them, there's great competition among the males for females, such that for the first time in history, females are now able to select their mates. Not only that, they have much better choices to choose from. A lot of males who can leave, some of the brighter, more talented, more skilled ones, are actually leaving China, going elsewhere in order, because what's a 25-year-old male want to do most in the world? Let's just say date. So they have little opportunity to do that in China. So it's been somewhat of a brain drain and talent drain.
Okay, so I'm going to bring this up just because it's slightly controversial, but it has to do with this topic where the women or the girls who were born in China when they weren't supposed to be born in China, because they wanted more males than females. That their parents would actually sell the girls into prostitution to take care of the family.
Yes.
And that was an honor as a female to do that. That is really scary, A. B, you would think they would have more children, but I guess they're not really supposed to exist. I don't know how that works out and what this social.
Well, they would be heavily penalized if they had 2 children. They were allowed only
right.
one.
But it was an honor for a female to be sold into prostitution to take care of her family. That is just, I guess if you only had a girl, that was your responsibility. I don't know. I don't know how all that works.
Well, understand their mindset is vastly different. The Oriental mindset is vastly different from the Occidental. And they have more of a familial responsibility. They value their ancestry and family more than what you might see on average in the West.
Mm-hmm.
So, that contributes to their, I guess, somewhat willingness. I don't know how to put it. I can't really speak for them. It's sad. It's tragic, horribly tragic. But if there's any sense of honor that they may have from it, or sacrificing themselves on behalf of the family, that's where it would arise from. Crazy Cat Queen, I'm having internet issues, so if I don't get to say goodnight to y'all, I'm sorry. No problem. We appreciate the heads up, and again, always good to see you. Really enjoy your presence.
We do, and good night to you if you if you have to
Yeah.
watch this later or whatever. If you do get back on, we love you. We appreciate you being here.
Very much so. So in 2020, China's fertility rate was about 1.3. So let me back up. In 2015, China ended the one-child policy, went to a 2-child policy, then a few years later went to a 3-child policy, which is what's in effect now. So even with that, 5 years later in 2020, females were still only having an average of 1.3 kids, which is not even the replacement rate. The replacement rate is 2 or higher. So China's population is falling. It's down to about 1.4 billion people now, which sounds like a pretty big number. But the interesting thing to me was they've lost 850,000 people this last year alone in total population. That's not total deaths. That's total population drop. So what does this mean long term? Implications for demographics. Well, there's fewer people to produce goods. There's fewer people to pay taxes. There's fewer people to take care of the increasing number of older people. This in an increasingly Marxist system. The chairman there has been greatly expanding his powers the past couple of years. He's a Maoist in terms of his dedication to the Communist Party. So this means ultimately reduced pensions. It means reduced health care. It means fewer younger people will have to take a larger responsibility in caring for parents and grandparents, leaving less time for kids and work. You wonder why women aren't having babies in China? Because they have to spend so much time working, and they know that they're going to have to take care of parents and grandparents. They don't have time for kids. So this leads to another problem with China, the nature of its economy. It has grown past 30 years since the 90s by having the ability to replicate Western technology and produce it cheaper. Problems going forward is that in Marxist economies, there's usually very little innovation. You have to get approval of a committee, bureaucrats. You can't challenge existing production. There are all sorts of concerns and issues with starting a new business. It just doesn't happen in Marxist economies. There's no competition to stimulate improvements in goods or services, to improve quality or to lower price. Producers have a monopoly. They're told exactly what to produce, how to make it, and how much to charge for it. So history's been pretty clear on how that works out for improving living standards in the long term. It's been tried over 100 times and has failed every time. Now, if you extend this consideration, having fewer workers means fewer cheap workers. China's standard of living has risen over the past 30 years, which also leads to greater expectations of even higher standards of living. The problem when through history, when societies start to revolt, isn't when times get worse. It's when times get better, but they're not getting better fast enough. When people are oppressed and kept down, they don't tend to revolt. But when things start getting better, they start feeling their oats, sowing their oats, whatever, but not getting better fast enough. That's when you have revolutions. So having to revert to a lower standard of living, more work, less money, probably isn't going to go over well. That'd be my guess. Tons of young people have already left in search of companionship, female companionship, and they're likely to be followed by women looking for more opportunities and a better life until Xi shuts the borders. So, that's a serious problem long-term for China. It's not something they can rectify quickly. Now, China is trying to solve the cheap labor issue by creating more robotic manufacturing plants. Only problem is they don't produce the robots. They have to import them from Germany, the US, Japan, South Korea, wherever. Well, the US, Korea, Germany are all building robots for their own manufacturing plants. So if the cost of a robot is the same in each place, if the cost of raw goods is the same in each place, well, you can save transportation costs by making it closer to home, which means fewer and fewer companies will be shipping raw materials over to China to be processed for with cheap labor, turned into finished goods, and then brought back to the U.S. That won't be an issue because a robot's a robot. So to me, that's a long-term problem for China. No innovation. Their advantage in cheap labor is disappearing, vaporizing literally right before their eyes. It's just not a sustainable growth model. Now, another huge problem with China is their debt. Their debt to GDP ratio is about 160%. And I think the US's is too high. Ours is about 135%. But China has us beat. If you look at their total stock of debt, personal, corporate, government, it's over 300% of GDP. China has borrowed out the wazoo to improve their to live at a higher standard of living than what they really could afford. They've built thousands of empty cities, literally metropolitan areas with skyscrapers and everything that have zero people living in it. The fascinating thing about this is a good portion of all this construction is basically bad loans that will never be repaid. These are huge systemic issues. Now, just looking at the ghost cities, for example, they use debt. Well, where'd they get the money? Who'd they borrow the money from? They borrowed the money from people, individuals using their retirement funds. Well, there are now over 160 million excess apartment units in China. And now China is just going in and blowing up these buildings and tearing them down. You can see videos all over the internet. With the buildings that they tear down, understand that the savings of the individuals used to build that building vaporize. So capital is being regularly destroyed in China. Not a problem. They'll just borrow more, right? Not a problem. It's a major problem, a huge major problem. It's a systemic problem that is not going to be solved. And as people get older and they start expecting the income from their retirement funds and they're told there's nothing there, well, you can imagine how that's going to go over. Especially when they were promised and guaranteed that this would, because the state was using it to expand the economy, et cetera, et cetera. You get the idea. Another major problem, obviously, is the communist dictatorship. It's only one party allowed, one ideology allowed. This, again, stifles innovation. It stifles free thought. It stifles creation, which leads to less foreign investment. How many foreigners wanted to invest in the Soviet Union? How many, new projects, new industries arose from communist governments? How about North Korea? How much of a force have they been on the, economic innovation, prosperity kind of standard? These kind of strict dictatorship type governments ultimately end up reducing foreign trade and kill any investment. All of this contributes to instability. And remember, China's got $1.4 trillion. It's 1.4 trillion people. It's declining, but you piss off a portion of those people, you got millions, tens of millions, hundreds of millions of people. Yeah, you're going to have a hard time controlling that. So in order to keep everybody united, what do unstable dictators do? They generally try to start a war somewhere. That's the big risk. Now, China in 5 to 10 years will be a has-been. And I've said this since the early 2000s, once I, started taking a look at the one-child policy. I noticed the demographics changing. There are just practical realities, repeated patterns in history that you can't get past. A country with a dying, aging population is a dying country. It's a dying economy. There's a huge lesson and risk in that for us as well. But that being said, 5 or 10 years, China is going to just literally collapse on itself. Now, what's going to happen the next year or two? That's the real risk. But I don't see China as a long-term threat. Our long-term threat is probably India economically. They have more honor students than we have students. And they speak English, the international language of business. So I tell my kids that's where our competition's coming from.
Well, I got thoughts about that one. Every time I need tech support, the call centers are usually in India, and they don't speak that great of English. I'm just saying.
Yeah,
I am not real good. Yeah, I'm not real good at understanding different, not American English dialects or even like British dialects, but dialects from other countries. I guess just born in the South, I don't know. I just have a hard time with it. It's just a weakness of mine, however.
Well, you're not alone, but it's a whole lot easier to moderate a dialect and to learn to speak a little slower than it is to learn English.
Oh, I'm sure.
So that's a big advantage for them. So China, I think China has some serious problems ahead. Not terribly concerned about them as a competitor per se. And companies that are considering investing over there, if you'll notice, a lot of factories have been leaving China. Even Taiwan, you see Taiwan's largest chip manufacturer. What is it? TMPC is trying to build a plant in the U.S. They just announced last week that it's going to take them longer to do it because they can't find enough skilled workers. Hey, American education system. But anyway, it just doesn't bode well for China. So the implications for the U.S., if that economy is dying, if that cheap labor is disappearing, if that trade partner is disappearing. China, for example, has a corner on all the rare earth materials sold in the world. Rare earth materials are essential in making batteries and windmills and a lot of these different products. Are you okay, Ellen?
Oh, I'm fine. I just was going to say something that I probably shouldn't. Because you know me. How China got those mineral rights. I'm just shucks.
But the U.S. is starting to open up rare earth mines again. They were closed, obviously, due to, price inefficiencies and environmental issues, but they've now been deemed essential to the U.S. economy and the U.S. military. So, you're seeing world production starting to redevelop in a lot of these areas that China has really ruled for decades. Again, I just have a hard time finding any trends that are positive with China. And with that amount of it's a huge population. There's huge demand there, or potential demand. But if income's dying, if, people are less able to work, if there's no innovation, that demand is not going to grow. So will indicate lower U.S. growth because we have smaller markets to export to. Again, there's some struggling issues out here.
Gastonia, is that North Carolina?
My brother-in-law works for Gastonia's water department. Even he says it's tough finding good hires. Some kids apparently can't pick out a wrench. That's sad and true.
When I would change like the sockets, in our house, or replace a light switch, or fix a toilet, or replace a toilet, I would make my children stand there with me and hand me tools. So they would learn, like, this is, no offense, but their father was useless at fixing things. So I was like little Miss Fix It. And yeah, but Gastonia, I was just there actually last week.
Saw this about the current generation. And I thought this was, modestly funny. I detect no lies. So here is Gen Z going to war.
I don't know. Yeah.
I will survive. Oh, as long as I know how to love, I know I'll stay alive. I've got all my life to live. I've got all my love to give. And I'll survive. I will survive. Hey, hey.
Woo. That's pretty sad.
I thought that was hilarious.
That's awful.
I did.
No, it is, but it's also sad because it's true.
Because it's true, or has a lot of truth to it.
Okay, I'm doing this now. This is your job later. I've been doing this.
I
Now, Gastonia. No, but Gastonia is not, as far as North Carolina is concerned, I mean, it's not that far from Charlotte, but it is a relatively economically depressed area. So, I mean, I get it.
Well, you think in economically depressed areas, there would be kids hungry to work, take any job to learn and try to develop their skills.
Yeah, but the problem is what they're being taught in schools isn't to
or
be,
not being taught.
Or not being taught is not to be helpful and not to be entrepreneurial and not to learn to think. They're being taught what they should think. And that is the problem. And if it's happening in towns like Gastonia, that's actually where my grandfather's wife is in a rehab center for her issues. But it is, I mean, if it happens there, if we don't have these good old boys up near the mountains trying to learn how to do stuff, that's a problem.
Yeah, tonight we've talked about some things which have pretty clear implications for the economy, inflation.
That too. Hang on.
That's, it's another one of those, do you laugh or cry?
Well, the problem is like North Wilkesboro or Wilkes County is like the number one for opioid OD, believe it or not, even though Wilmington is like number 5 or 6 in the company for opioid.
Yeah, we're up there.
Distribution. Yeah.
But now for most of our viewers, for example, things like CPI and inflation, you may understand and hopefully better understand now that CPI is not inflation, but how does that help you? My point has been, and I know a lot of people are struggling out there. I know there's a lot of people that are struggling to make ends meet. Who's the Oliver guy? His current song?
Oliver Anderson Oliver.
Yeah, the country song that is just kind of swept the nation.
It's the rich man above Richmond,
Yeah.
north of Richmond, excuse me.
So how does this help you? Well, I hope from some of the things that we said, some of the things we, have talked about previously, that you have some understanding that inflation is probably not going away quickly. If money's tight and you're struggling, it's hard to come up with easy solutions. There's just not. We had somebody even last week say that, they had to quit their Costco subscription. Now, sitting there thinking ways to save money because we know food prices are going to keep soaring, for example. So if you're in a store and you see a really good sale, if you can, try to stock up a little bit every week.
Even just like an extra can of green beans, or buy a pack of ramen noodles or something, just a little extra something, because from what I think Clay and I are seeing is this isn't going away anytime soon. And I think Clay also I told him about a website he was going to bring up. I think he's going to do that. If you are in need, and it doesn't matter your age, it doesn't matter your situation.
What was the name of it?
Benefitscheckup.org, not the other one that you went to.
Yeah, this is it.
Green bean. I know, Alyssa, your baby. Okay, so benefitscheckup.org. You can just enter your zip code, and they will ask you like your age, and they will ask you what your income is and what your issues are. And they will find every resource available for you in your area that can help you with anything. So that's it's a great resource. I mean, if you don't have to be older or disabled, they will just give you everything that's any program in your area that you may qualify for. So,
and it is region specific. So you put in your own individual zip code and it will find the programs that are applicable in your area. Cost of medicine, food, other benefits. And there's no cost or charge on this. It is free.
Nope. Completely free. And they just give you like a rundown. Okay, well, here's, based on what you put in, here is everything available to you. And I used to use this a lot when I was working with, other people, going, okay, here's what I know you're having trouble in this area, so let's see what we can do to improve that. And it's a great, it's some doing as far as putting in your information and going to the different sites and all the things, but I think it's worth doing, especially if you have issues. And Crazy Cat Queen, yes, lots of beans made from dry beans and rice. Dry beans. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, another thing thought of, like if you're having to drop Costco, maybe you can go in with some friends and split a Costco membership, have, one person go and then split up the food. Cause to me, that's one problem with Costco. When you go, you're buying big cases of stuff and maybe split that up. It is cheaper than buying at most any grocery store I'm aware of.
Clay and I'll go and I'm like, Clay, we don't need a bag of limes. He's like, yeah, but a bag of limes here is cheaper than 4 limes at the grocery store. And I'm like, well, yeah, okay.
As much as I hate it, I do end up throwing away a lot of it because I don't use it before it turns. But buying it, it's still cheaper. even with the waste, which I hate. I mean, my father went through the Great Depression, and throwing away food was a major sin to him. And so that's still in my bones. But I realize that it's so much cheaper than what you get at the grocery store in a lot of cases, buying in that kind of bulk.
Yeah, we'll take the limes and throw them in our disposal just to clean it out, refresh it if we don't use them. I mean, we don't waste air that much. Come on now. No, but
So
sharing that with your dad, good.
Yeah, if any of y'all have any ideas
Good idea.
on, helping people who are strapped or tight, please share them with us. We'll share them to the channel at large, because we know there's a lot of people that watch this channel that are struggling. And, if there's something we can do to help, obviously we want to. So,
Yeah, and we'll
this
share any
is-
resources with you guys that we have. I mean, but benefits checkup. I mean, even if you have a neighbor, maybe she's an older lady, older gentleman, maybe they're single, maybe they're married. You just see that they're struggling. Share this with them, because a lot of people are prideful, and they don't want to ask for help. But when the help is there, they need to take advantage of it, because the older people in our community are the ones that need it the most, but even some of the younger ones do too. So like I said, if you have a neighbor and you're like, I haven't seen her coming in and out in a while, I think something's going on, just, share the website. Say, hey, maybe I can help you. Let's do this together.
It's a good idea. And, there's a good chance that there are hard times ahead. And so, if you have the opportunity to, start planning, some of your own food, even if it's just simple things like tomatoes, potatoes, they're easy to grow, onions. I think over the next few years, you'll be very thankful that you did. It's just going to be what I see basically, like, from China and other places, is a deglobalization. We've for decades been talking about globalization. Well, there are many tides, underlying currents, such as China's economic collapse, such as the war, increasing hostilities between different regions, that will undermine globalization. So as trade decreases, as debt and expenses of the government increase, inflation probably will continue to run. Inflation will last longer and higher than what most people think. The rates, a lot of people are saying, hey, the Fed's going to start cutting rates in, 3 or 6 months, whatever. And they may a little bit. But if you look at the government debt, for example, the soaring debt, the deficit this year is double last year's. Also, China, if their economy is collapsing, they're not only not going to be buying treasuries, they're going to be selling what they've got to raise cash. Japan looks like it's going to start hiking its rates. So Japanese investors will be buying more Japanese bonds than U.S. bonds. So you're going to have less demand for U.S. bonds, which means with the supply increasing and demand dropping, prices will fall. The rates thereby will go up. So we're going to be in an environment with higher rates, which will, again, retard economic growth.
When you say higher rates, you mean what kind of rates?
Interest rates to borrow money, housing, new businesses, cars,
credit
all
cards.
of it.
Gotcha.
So the higher rates go, the more brakes are put on the economy. So my crystal ball is not perfect, but I've been doing this for 40 years, and I'm not alone. Some of the best investors we've in history, Ray Dalio, Druckenmiller, just saw another one today. But there's some extremely successful men in terms of investments and understanding the markets and trends that agree with me. Not that they go, oh, I see where Moffat said this and they're agreeing with him, but we share the same outlook. So that doesn't mean I'm right. Doesn't mean my crystal ball is perfect. But I want you paying attention. I want you aware of the potential risk and trying to, as you can, take steps to prepare for these eventualities, potential eventualities. So Catherine pointed out travel is getting very expensive and more exclusive. It is. And it's probably not, cost is probably not going to drop anytime soon. Food, Russia just announced an embargo on Ukraine exporting food. This past month, Ukraine exports were down a third. Less wheat, less grain. Well, what's grain used for? Well, it's used to feed livestock and cattle. It's used to make bread, all sorts of cereals, things. So if there's
like the cattle that was killed in Texas and in Ireland.
Oh yeah, but I'm just saying that with increasing grain shortages, food shortages, the price of a lot of things are going up. Butter, because there's less milk produced. Meat, because there's less cattle and hogs. The feed costs for them are higher. This just has repercussions throughout the economy. It's not just one item that's an issue here. Hey, at least your crystal ball is intact. Mine is broken in like 3 places with cracks everywhere else. Mine's probably been patched up a fair amount.
It's been kicked in and repaired.
Yeah. But I've generally been right on the major trends for the past 40 years. I spent an awful lot of time trying to study some of the underlying currents and the trends and make decisions accordingly. Now, have all those decisions worked out? No. There are some times where the market has been stupider longer than I could remain solvent. If you're going to be investing, actively investing, that happens. But I was still right.
Oh, the whole GMC thing.
GM thing.
Yeah, GM. That's something you will never let go.
Yeah, that's something. That's a long story. I won't.
That's another night.
I don't have time to share it now, but maybe some other time you catch me in a rambling mood, I'll ask me about GM. Crazy Cat Queen. We've already cut down our meat intake to twice a week. That's all meals, not just dinners.
Yeah.
There's a lot of people that are having to change the way they eat because of the inflation, because of the increased cost. Sometimes due to supply. I've been to the store sometimes and they've been out of certain foods or the shelves have been really thin.
And there was that chicken that I refused to cook.
Oh yeah, we bought some chicken and I can't even describe to you. It's shredded into threads. I've never seen chicken meat when you pull it apart. It shreds into something like chicken spaghetti.
It was just like a little flap, and I pulled it back and looked at it, and I said, Clay, I sent a picture. I said, I don't know what this is, but this is not normal chicken meat, and I'm not eating it because this is the. You want me to email you the picture? Oh, you remember that? I did show that. We did show that, didn't we?
Yeah. That's not how chicken meat looks when you pull it separated or whatever. It doesn't turn into spaghetti. It was just weird. Have no good explanation for it.
I was just like, yeah, not eating it. Sorry. Thanks.
So the idea is that hopefully the information gives you more time, opportunity to try to prepare, and these things don't catch you unawares. Some
just buy a
preparation is
little,
better than none.
just buy a little extra can of something or something when you're at the store. Just
or
a little extra.
give more thought to trying to develop, grow your own crops. If you have a sunny porch, if you have a little bit of land, whatever, anything you can do to make yourself more independent is a good thing in the future, a very good thing. So maybe that may be trying to start your own YouTube channel and, develop some additional source of income, whatever you can think of. I have a good friend
Don't you
who
know?
got divorced, moved down to Florida, had no job, doesn't have a degree, no skills. And she started making denim jackets with like rhinestones and stars and, cut out of letters and stars
Bedazzled.
names or bedazzled. And now she's selling these jackets for $3,000 a piece.
What?
She's gotten some famous people to buy them.
No
Yeah,
kidding.
just in the past 6 months, she's got some more kind of thriving business.
Oh wow.
Gotten singers and actors buying her coats. There's opportunity out there. I can't tell you exactly what, but be thinking about it. Look for the opportunities and look for ways to make yourself more independent and prepare for these kind of contingencies that very possibly will be coming the next year or two.
And we have found some very easy ways to grow food. Like you can take the butt of romaine lettuce. What do you call that? A head, I guess. Once you use all the lettuce on the romaine, you just take some Q-tips, some toothpicks. You put 3 in there. You put it on top of a glass with some water that reaches it. When it starts growing, you plant it, and it continues to grow. Like some of the stuff is really easy. We found that, however, avocados like to grow together. They don't like to be alone. Oh, where are?
Yeah, there's just a lot of little things that you can grow in pots if you have some decent sunshine and, give them a little water. If it cuts your food bill 10 or 20%, a week or a month, that can be big. So, Sandy, the pups want their own YouTube channel, please.
They would love that. We need to do just like a pup cam all day long and just let them do their thing.
There are times when Chunk is just entertaining as hell.
See,
Avocados need a male and female plant.
How do you know which is which?
I was just about to ask, but I was going to word it a little different. I don't think I can just assume their gender, can I?
How do you know which seeds are male and female? Please, if you know, because we
Can I
tried
just
to grow
listen to
one.
them and go, "Oh, this is now a male. This is now a female."
So monetize your pets. Hey, if it
Damn
works for
right.
you, go for it.
About time they carry their own weight.
Well, Melissa, we've got 2 seeds that are hiding out in the cabinet now in wet paper towels in a bag. 2 weeks, 3 weeks before we can plant them?
We need to go check them out.
How do we know which is which? Please tell me. I am so curious because Toots told me this as well. And I'm like, well, the females, okay. Bear no fruit. No idea.
No idea how to tell from the seeds.
So you're saying what we have is 2 incubated. We have no idea what's. All right, it's cool.
We got a 50-50 chance. I'm good with that.
Maybe we should do like 2 more of your avocados and increase our chances of getting a mate.
Maybe I'll Google the hell out of it and figure out what the difference is.
I mean, that's
All right.
All right.
Anybody have any other questions? It's about that time.
It is about that time. It's about my bedtime.
Y'all have been an extremely enjoyable group.
We do love
As
you guys.
usual.
Y'all are the best.
We really do. Y'all make this time an extreme joy for us, and we're very grateful for it. For those of you that are just watching, if you will, if you got some value out of the broadcast, hit like for us, subscribe, and would love to have you. Brentwood, what are we doing Tuesday for my birthday?
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday
It's a
to
little
you.
early. Not
Happy
yet.
birthday. I know. So that would be the 29th. Is that right?
We will have an online birthday party for Brentwood.
We will. Mm-hmm.
So if y'all can come by just for a few minutes and let's all sing happy birthday to Brentwood at the appropriate time.
We love you,
Join
Melissa.
us.
We love you, Brentwood. Of course, we love you, KP. And yes, happy birthday, Brentwood. And Catherine, we love you to death. And Sandy, of course, and Crazy Cat Queen, and all the people. You guys are the best. We so appreciate having you here. And
Sky Ricky.
Sky
you
Ricky,
as well.
hello.
And there's a few of you that aren't chatting. That's okay. We still love you. For those of you on the replay crew, love you guys
We love
too.
you. Absolutely.
Thank you all very much. And it's a good night. And our time is up.
We'll see you
But
Tuesday.
we do really thank you for yours. And see you Tuesday. Good night, all.
All right.